I would like to call the committee meeting, the curriculum committee meeting to order. In attendance, we have Mike Whitney and myself, Adrian Johnson, as board members, Superintendent Susan Austin, and Assistant Superintendent Anne Marie Mancini at 6:02. So the first order of business is to review the meeting minutes. So can I take a motion to accept the minutes?
I move to accept the minutes.
I will second that. Discussion?
None.
All right. Minutes are approved. Next thing is discussion on professional development plan for next year, which I'm very excited to hear about. So, Anne Marie?
Thank you. I'm very excited to talk about it. I want to note that this plan is still kind of in development. Nothing has been completely finalized. This is a draft and, so I want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. We are still working on this, but I'm really happy with where it is right now and really excited to share it with you. Now, that said, how can I get this to advance? There we go. So I want to talk a little bit about the approach that I take when I'm planning professional development. And I've had a lot of experience in this, going back at least 2 districts. When I worked for the Capital Region Education Council, I had to plan professional development. Part of my responsibilities was planning professional development for all of the district's teachers, including a 3-day new teacher orientation, which would include upwards sometimes of 600 to 700 teachers, because they actually require all teachers in their first 3 years to participate in new teacher orientation. And then, of course, the big district PD days would be all of the district teachers. So there was, a number of teachers. I forget what the total was when I worked there. And then my former place of work, East Hartford Public Schools, this was a big part of my responsibility as well. And then because of my interest in professional development and the way that teachers learn, I actually incorporated professional development into my dissertation, which I recently defended in October. And really specifically, it looked at how do districts take important instructional initiatives and then implement them effectively, obviously through professional development. That's a big part of it. And that focus specifically that I was looking at the time was culturally responsive teaching. So it was kind of a 2-pronged component to my dissertation. So I want to kind of incorporate some highlights here that I've learned over the years. First of all is, and I think that this is not going to be a surprise to anyone. Annually, districts spend an enormous amount of money on professional development. And because of that, you really want it to be something that is valuable and meaningful for teachers, and that works in terms of, when I say works, it means improves student outcomes and helps teachers to grow. So in looking into this a little bit further, and I did extensive research on this as a part of my lit review, and I'm just summarizing some things here, that in order for professional development to have an impact on teacher practice and student outcomes, it must include the following elements. And I just summarized here really like the 4 main ones. First of all, it should be designed intentionally or using a systems-based approach in order to meet the teacher's needs. Secondly, it must include opportunities for teachers to actively participate. So you want to actually incorporate strategies that are effective related to adult learning and just learning in general. So the more they can be actively engaged, the better. You want to also incorporate opportunities for teachers to collaborate and reflect. And this kind of gets into another related point that I didn't mention here, that when you have professional development, they always say that it's important for teachers to be seated strategically next to their maybe grade level teammates or their colleagues from their schools, because that helps them to be more open during the collaboration and reflection process. And then finally, it's got to be reinforced by leaders through coaching, feedback, and support. The first part of this is really important about leaders, and that is that everyone's got to be on the same page. If we say we're moving forward with implementing a new literacy program, you can't have 1 or 2 of our leaders saying, whether it be a principal or a elementary literacy specialist or whomever it is, can't have someone being like, well, I didn't pick this program, so I don't like it. Everyone's got to be kind of rowing in the same direction. And the other piece is that it's got to be reinforced. You can't just kind of hold a workshop session maybe in September or October, and then never revisit the things that teachers have learned during that session. It's got to be something that is continuously built upon during the year. You can't jump from one initiative to the next initiative. All right, so kind of considering those pieces, I outlined here what the effective elements, some of the effective elements of professional learning, and then how I went about designing the professional learning plan for next year. And again, I want to emphasize it's only in draft right now. So thinking about teachers' needs and even their interests, we identified these by working with the members of the GTLC, or the Groton Teaching and Learning Collaborative, and we also reviewed district data. In terms of a systems-based approach, and I just talked about this, I am intentionally designing a professional learning, depending upon the grade level and the content area, sessions that build upon one another. I really do think that it's important. You can't do something related to maybe culturally responsive teaching in August, and then jump over something specific to math, and then in November, and then do a completely different session when we meet again in March. It just doesn't make sense. Third, it's got to involve active participation and collaboration. And so when we have presenters, we make sure we vet them and that sessions are reviewed before the PD date, so that we make sure that there are opportunities for teachers to collaborate and be actively engaged in learning. It has to incorporate feedback or opportunities for feedback. And after each one of our sessions this year, every teacher was given an opportunity to provide feedback through a survey. And I can't tell you how many surveys I've made this year, just essentially for every single session that we've done. And we've collected a lot of good feedback from this. And based on that feedback, I've adjusted. So I looked at the feedback. Now, I wasn't here in August, but I did look at those surveys. And based on the feedback that the teachers gave us, I made adjustments for November. And then based on what we got in November, I made adjustments for the March plan. And that was just this year alone. And then finally, ongoing support. This is where we incorporate our coaches, our specialists, and our other district leaders. So looking at our professional learning plan moving forward into next school year, I kind of tried to think about what are our big areas of focus? Where do we want to really put our energies? There's a big continued focus, of course, on the Wit and Wisdom Literacy Program. And that's really important. We don't want to say in this school year, Wit and Wisdom and our literacy program is important, and then next year jump to something else. It gives conflicting messages to teachers, and our teachers have indicated to us that they still need support in this area. We also are continuing to work on K-5 science. I know that Ben Moon has come in and spoken to this group. He does incredible work, and he's been partnering with the Connecticut Science Center. They did do one session this year. I believe it was in March. And the feedback that we got from our teachers was that they want more. They want to learn more about this student-centered approach to science. And so they're going to come back and do some additional sessions with our teachers. Mathematics is an area that we've been talking about as a full board all year long. And I really have taken, I've listened quite a bit to the discussions that have happened here and wanted to build that in a very specific plan for supporting our teachers in mathematics. You'll see that in a little bit. Artificial intelligence is something that the board has also talked a little bit about, and our teachers are very curious about this. And it seems to me that our teachers are kind of all over there's a range of teachers in terms of their skill set. Some are just starting to dabble in AI, or maybe know very little about artificial intelligence and how it could enhance their lessons and their work with students. And some are very, very skilled at this. So we want to kind of start bringing everyone to the same level, and we're going to start to work on that next year. The digital SAT is something that really we saw a change from the College Board, not this school year, but the prior one. And what I've learned in my conversations with the high school team is that they want to make sure that our teachers are up to speed on some of the changes. Now, when people think digital SAT, they think, oh, well, we just simply moved on. They went from a paper and pencil test, the kids, to a online test. That's not the case. There were actual changes made to the SAT that we want to bring our teachers up to speed on. And then finally, another big piece of our work next year will be the IB self-study that's happening both at the middle and the high school level. And we really believe that it's important to give our teachers time to look at the revision of policies that's required with that, updating curricula, and reflecting on their current practice. So with that said, I wanted to kind of share with you some professional learning, what I'm calling sequences or sample plans. And I have a number of them, obviously based on each content and grade level area. If you want to see more, I certainly can show you more, but I just included 3 samples here. The first learning sequence is with our K2 teachers. Right now, this is what it looks like. On August 26th, basically every day, every PD day, almost every PD day is broken into 2 separate sessions. You see here on August 26th, there's actually a third because there's what I'm calling like a skinny. Instead of it being a 3-hour module, you see it's like a much longer, it's a much shorter module of an hour and a half. But for the most part, there's a session in the morning, there's a lunch break, and a session in the afternoon. So on August 26th, you'll see that our K2 teachers are going to do a program prep and review, preparing for Module 1 of Wit and Wisdom, just making sure that revisiting some of the things that we did this year and looking at how we can improve our instruction moving forward. Then they're going to do some report card review and calibration. Our literacy coordinator, Sarah Beth Stonona, she spoke with us at the last full board meeting about some of the work that she's doing. One of the things she mentioned is that they're reviewing the report card and making some updates. And, a lot of that is going to consist on making the language a little bit more, I would say, user-friendly for our families and our caregivers. And so we're going to kind of use that time to review some of the changes to the report card. And then in the afternoon, they're going to have their first session in improving instructional practices in math. The person that we are bringing in is a woman that did some work with us this year. Her name is Robin Moore. She is a certified trainer for illustrative mathematics. She's also very skilled in building thinking classrooms. And we're really going to focus next year in really K-8, not specifically on a program or platform, but really just about strengthening our instructional practices in mathematics. I think that's before you do anything, implement a new program, look at a new curriculum, we have to look at where our teachers are and how comfortable they are with mathematics, especially at the elementary level where most teachers, in fact, I think all teachers, they major as an elementary education major. They don't major in mathematics or social studies or English. And so we have to work to make sure that the practices are really solid. And then you'll see here, we're building on some of our sequence. So you see the Wit and Wisdom module appears again, module 2 in November and also in March. And then you see Robin Moore comes back and works with our teachers again in math in March. What you don't see outlined here is that we are going to continue to work with Robin Moore on some of our TLI days, and I just didn't list them in this case. Here's the sequence for grades 3 through 5 teachers. Essentially, it's the same with the exception of when our K2 teachers are working on literacy, our 3-5 teachers are working on math and vice versa. And so there's some consistency, again, K through 5, so that all of our elementary teachers understand that our 2 main initiatives next year are working on ELA and math. And of course, we're incorporating a little bit of science. I want to talk a little bit about one of our high school sequences, and I just picked out science as an example. So looking at our science teachers and what they're going to do, they are going to have sessions on understanding the digital SAT. The first one's going to be on just providing them with an overview of what the new digital SAT requires of students, what it's like, what they experience when they log into the platform or the assessment. You'll see that comes up again in November. They're specifically going to focus on the evidence-based reading and writing tests and how that the types of things that relate to science. So, for example, on this new assessment, it's a much heavier science emphasis when students get their reading passages. The test prior to this, when students get their evidence-based reading and writing assessment, they had 2 passages that were social studies based and 2 that were science and 1 that was a fiction text. Now, the College Board is leaning a little bit heavier towards science. And so we wanted to bring our science teachers up to speed on that. And then finally, in March, they'll be looking at the digital SAT again in terms of planning and classroom alignment. Now, one thing that is not seen here is that our teachers are going to meet in December with Sam Rosenson from College Planning Partnerships. They're going to use that time to look at the PSAT data, which is usually in December. Because our students take the school day test in October. And they also have another session, an additional session, I believe it's in February, leading up to that March or April assessment. Usually we give it around early April. This year was end of March. So between the end of March, early April, we'll have 2 additional sessions to prepare our teachers to work with students more effectively. On the flip side of their sessions, you'll see that there's a heavy focus on this working to enhance our curriculum instruction assessment using AI. And they're going to be working with Dr. Kennedy on all 3 dates, first in August, then in November, and then in March. So, again, taking that thread of learning and making sure that it continues throughout the school year. That's the end of my presentation, but the other thing I really wanted to make sure that I noted is that sometimes when you see professional development that's done in school districts or maybe at the college level, you see that people are put into large auditoriums and, there's someone talking at them. Well, I already talked to you about my philosophy of making sure that sessions are interactive and things like that. But these sessions that I'm designing purposefully are smaller sessions. So, when you take K2 teachers together, that's not a very large group. When we do have larger groups, we make sure that the elementary specialists are pushing in and have an opportunity. Maybe I'm just going to take the grade 1 teachers. We'll do maybe one large group or component of the large group session, and then we'll pull out the first grade teachers to work with one of our elementary literacy specialists or one of our math literacy specialists. So I don't want there to leave an impression that these are one of those things where it's a sit and get, everybody in the auditorium, 500 teachers, and that kind of leaves, first of all, it's not a recipe for success, and that leaves room for people to maybe be, I would say, multitasking or just not focused on what we want to accomplish during the session. So with all that said, I'm happy to take questions, and I want to again remind you that this is strictly in draft form right now.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see something like with a great foundation and well planned out, and those are just 2 examples, right?
Those are just 2 examples.
Of many. So your first point was a grabber for me when I looked at the slides before the meeting too, is that 18,000 per year not for us particularly, but on
average.
Per teacher for professional development. I was wondering if did that number basically, are they kind of including the fact that, okay, a teacher is spending their workday doing this or these workdays doing this, they're probably adding in that.
Probably adding in that, as I was reading, and sometimes you see a lot of different numbers depending upon it's a very large school district. Like if you think about Cleveland Public Schools or something, or Miami Public Schools, I think Miami actually is number 1 in the according to the research in terms of how much they spend. I don't know if that number is incorporated, like the fact that you're using this day and they're getting paid to attend but not instructing students.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's incorporated in or not. It didn't say specifically. As much reading as I've done on this, that's not something that was kind of itemized out.
Because we'd be seeing like in our budget, like a $500,000 professional development line, which I don't think we're seeing, although maybe it's broken up.
I just think about all those DODIAs have really had the backbone of PD. And when you think about 9 of them over the 10-year period at $1 million to 1.250, there are other costs. There's the evaluator costs, there's the project director, there's supplies. So it's not all PD, but we've certainly had that additional support in professional development.
And a lot of grants will cover PD as well, like Title II,
Yep.
can cover
Title II.
Title I funds. So even if Title IV, for example, is something that I oversee here and have overseen previously, depending upon what the focus is, you can use Title IV funds. So there's a lot of flexibility, and I think it may not be reflected in our board budget because we are able to pay for professional learning using a lot of grants.
Right. And I do like to see, it's nice to see that mix of sort of in-house talent and expertise presenting.
Yep.
as well, because you
Yeah.
often respond better to people you know, and then you respond in a different way, like something new and exciting coming in from the outside, from
Yeah, I think
Beckett
it's
Science Center, for instance.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for our teachers to have that mix because you want them to see their colleagues as experts. I mean, I think it's great when, for example, when our teachers or our coaches present. I love presenting professional development, but at the same time, you're right. People that are from the outside often have new and interesting ideas that you can only get when you bring people in. So while I want to be very mindful when we plan these professional development days, that you don't want to overspend and have an outside presenter for every session, every grade level. I think the mix is important.
Right. And then I can understand, of course, that classroom teachers, subject teachers would have professional development. I was wondering about, for instance, special education teachers and even paras.
Yeah. So our paras are required to attend professional development, I believe, for a certain amount of
18
hours.
hours, I
18
believe, is the
hours.
state legislation.
Mhm.
And
Very
we've
good.
always provided it, and the TLI days help too to support that. But we've actually added another day and paying in their salary for them to attend beginning of the year. And then also in March, they
Yep.
did a half day.
Yes. And the president of the Paraprofessional Union is on the Groton Teaching and Learning Collaborative, the GTLC. And so when we're planning these sessions and when we're asking for input, she's there at the table and can let me know and the group know, hey, this is something that the paras are interested in. This is something that really didn't work for us. Like, for example, in November, there was some online professional development for paraprofessionals. And she said, yeah, that's good sometimes, but we'd like to have some in-person sessions as well. So we took that feedback and made sure in March we made those adjustments for them.
And even with those online components, it needs to be facilitated and discussed. It could be clips of things and then a discussion needs to happen, because if it's just online, it just loses
Yeah.
its oomph.
For anybody, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My other question, so there's at best a mixed view of professional development among teachers, because there's certain reputations that it has, like, when am I going to use this? Everything's being switched every year, and there always has to be renewal, and I think people understand that. But then there's also, I'm sitting here doing professional development when I really should be grading this
Yeah.
virtual or real stack of papers. Or I was wondering, within professional development days, is it allowable or acceptable to kind of carve out like an hour to, you know, do something other than, just, it could be team building, it could be actually working on something collective,
Yeah,
like
and-
basically open free time
Yeah.
somehow.
Yep, you'll see that actually, if I showed you the entire document, you'd see that depending upon the subject level or the grade, there is some time for, like, for example, team planning or goal development. TLI days, you often see that.
We even
and-
call it teacher initiated, and sometimes it's a collaborative plan or a grade level plan, but they really look at what is the charge ahead and then they personalize it and work together on it.
Yeah.
And we have resources like the specialists who are available
Yes.
to them to assist them.
And so I guess we could summarize it just as there's a lot on every teacher's plate,
Yep.
and professional development might add something to the plate or change the plate, but is there a way, like, within that to sort of let them feel like they're taking something off their plate or
Yeah, for sure.
progressing?
Yeah.
in
That's
some long
important, right?
I
objective
think that's,
way?
when we look at the K2 plan, for example, or really the K5 plan, and we're looking, for example, at the literacy development that they're doing, a lot of that is not like, it's not where people are providing them with instruction. It's collaborative time to work on, okay, we're getting ready for module 2 in Wit and Wisdom. Let's look back. What happened last year? How can we improve? So it's kind of more of like a collaboration session than, we're going to sit in a room now and someone's going to talk at us, about
Right.
Wit and Wisdom.
Right.
Like this year going through it the very first time, you'd hear things like, well, I don't know why we're reading this book and how is this going to relate, later on. But when they get to module 2 or 3, they said, oh, now we see it. So anytime you do it the first time around, there's some skepticism, but it does seem like their eyes are wide open now. And I think going through it the next year is going to be really a good thing. And they're going to be able to look at it and see, what are some things that, we can tweak tweak or what are some things, but they've really tried to be true to the program this year. And now I think they understand it better.
And we got that feedback loud and clear from our teachers that in August, they had a session that was with one of the presenters from Wit and Wisdom, and they thought it was beneficial. That really, they had actually a number of presenters come in. One worked, I think, with maybe K2, another worked with 3-5. But in November, we gave them time to work with one another and plan with our elementary literacy specialists leading that work. And they said that was incredibly valuable
profitable.
for them. So
Mhm.
that's why moving forward, we started to incorporate that into this year's plan.
So they always have a piece of that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think they need that.
And I liked your comment about, I hadn't heard that before, about new teachers, like for the first 3 years going to the orientation. My work, we have new student orientation, and often we really just kind of repeat it like 6 months later
Yeah.
for the
Just to
same
remind 'em.
students. But I think if we kind of had them
Yeah.
come, they could kind of, it basically almost like a peer interaction there at different stages. It could
That's what-
help quite a bit.
Again, this was a work I did at the Capital Region Education Council, and because there were so many that district at the time was growing exponentially, they were adding new magnet schools. So sometimes it would be an entire staff of a school, brand new school. They would have to come to new teacher orientation, and so that wound up being, especially for teachers in year 2 and 3, they weren't going to the basic sessions. They were going to sessions led by other CREC employees that were more experienced teachers and presenting for one another. But I think that's something that you have to do, as especially when you're going to year 3 of 3 days of new teacher orientation. That's essentially 9 days plus the other PD that you get throughout the year.
Right.
So there you want to really listen to your colleagues.
Thanks.
So I've got a couple, although you answered most of my questions. Do we keep track of the difficult parts of like Wit and Wisdom or a new curriculum? Do we keep track of, what teachers are saying was difficult like this
Yeah.
year? And then are we like kind of keeping a score sheet on the hard parts and focusing the PD for,
Yeah, absolutely.
next.
So as I mentioned, we collect surveys after every session, but not only during the or after PD. Our elementary literacy coordinator, Sarah Beth Sonona, who was here at our board meeting last week, she is constantly talking with teachers, collecting information from teachers, talking with our literacy specialists, getting feedback from our principals, and she's keeping that information. And that does help us to inform the work that we're going to do with them moving forward. So absolutely, we have so many notes on, what went well this year and, what we need to improve.
And I
I
think-
feel really prepared going into next year.
I think also we're looking at providing resources through Title I for the Hill for literacy, because that organization really helped us.
Yeah.
And I think just to get that kind of sense of people who really have that strong background in science of reading to be able to support some of the PD and some of their questions that they might have.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's going to look like, but
It's
we've
still under
had
development. I think we
yeah.
have a meeting with them either this week or next week, but it looks like we're leaning to doing work more in grades 3 through 5.
And Margie Gillis too. I
Yes,
think
she's
is
part of
that.
She's part of that. Yeah.
So she'll be working with us, and she did a whole group, but I thought she was fabulous. I've seen her a few times.
Yeah,
and
she's
have
very
known her
strong.
over the years, but for some things, I think, we do a large group, but I think even when we do the large group, it's important to get them into small groups to discuss it
Absolutely.
afterwards so that they can
Debrief, discuss.
debrief. Yeah.
And I think, you mentioned an important thing is that you have to really consider the presenter. Sometimes people know their stuff, just like a teacher. You can be, you can really be very knowledgeable, but there are some individuals that are just not good presenters. They don't engage the audience. And so we really consider that too. And we want to make sure that the presenters that work with our teachers are people that they're going to be able to relate to, want to engage in the professional learning session, and not turn off or tune out because of something that the presenter said, or the fact that they're not interesting or they don't seem knowledgeable.
We've recently had one in the middle school, and he actually worked in classrooms for a couple days with the teachers.
Yep.
And the teachers were just really wowed and want him back. You know, he was just terrific. And then the other one was in elementary school when she was doing some of the foundations of math and the properties of mathematics with them in a very engaging way.
Mhm.
And teachers really respond well, you can tell, and they'll answer you pretty freely. And we
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
stay out, we let them do it, but we'll pop in every now and again just to check to see if they have, you know, any questions or whatever. But we were getting good feedback in the hallways and I think on the survey.
And it's really important for me, and I know Susan does this as well, as the person who plans professional development, to be in sessions. And I can't be in all of them at once, but I make it a point to go to those sessions, go to the math session, go to the literacy session, make sure I understand how it's going. I will sit next to teachers that I trust and say, you know, I don't know all the teachers yet, but the ones I do know, and you know, I value their opinion. I will ask them, how's this going? What do you think of the presenter? What are you learning here? And so, you know, that is also a way that we get feedback. Although it's informal, but teachers don't hesitate to let us know
Oh,
what they
yeah.
like and what they
Good,
don't.
bad, or ugly. They do let us know. And we do have breakfast with the unions and they'll let us know, or we don't even have to wait for breakfast.
I do
I'll
think
get a
it's
call.
important, and I'm glad that they let us know,
Yeah,
because
I am too. They're
we
honest.
can't improve and make it better for them unless they're honest with us.
Mhm.
All right. One other thing are there any models, or is there any way to do PD kind of in a rolling fashion? I mean, I know we're stuck with 3 PD days where we've got to do the entire district at once. And teachers probably aren't going to want to do it over in a rolling fashion over Christmas vacation, but is there a way to do that in a school system, or is that just not possible?
Can you,
Basically to get smaller PD sessions. So I'm thinking of a group of a dozen teachers, you know, maybe the K and 1 team or
Yeah.
the 2 and 3 team per school, and to do like a shorter, maybe not even a whole day.
Yep. So I give you an example of something that we did just last week. We had a person come in from New York, and, you know, kind of along the lines of improving our teachers' instructional practices. We had each grade level at the elementary level come in. So it was all the grade 1 teachers. They came in for a 3-hour session, and it was 2.5 or 3 hours, and worked with this consultant from New York. And that went really well because it was a smaller session. We had this person very knowledgeable, was engaging, and
And she was honest with them.
Yeah.
They loved that she was just real.
And that was something that we planned. Probably we started working on that around January or February. And, you know, it was, we did all of the, let's see, I think it was grades 2 and 5 the first day, K and 1 the second day, and 3 and 4 the third day.
And they had the
Just
books to
opposite.
go with it. So they had the lessons to go with it that they would do with the class. So they had gotten these new books and they've had other versions of these things they call strings, which are really laying the foundations in the properties of mathematics with kids and doing a lot of mental math. But, you know, this like took it to a whole nother level, these new books. And now they're so excited about having the books because now they know how to, you know, do some of these things, and they've been, you know, given the taste test.
I
for
will
it.
tell you what's problematic about a model like that when we don't have a day where kids are not in school is that, you know, then you're pulling teachers for 3 hours from their classroom. And this time of year, they don't always love that idea. And I would talk about feedback. When I originally sent out a memo saying, hey, we have this great opportunity. You're going to be, you know, learning about math. We have this presenter that's coming in, and here's the schedule. Some of the initial feedback was not positive to me about that. And I understood why, because, you know, as a teacher, it's oftentimes more work to be out of your classroom and to prepare for that than to, you know, than to be in a professional, obviously, than to be in a professional development on the day off. It's always harder to be outside of your class. And because you have to do the preparations, sometimes there are repercussions from being out. You know, maybe the students feel a little naughty and you got to deal with that. So, you know, ultimately, I think they were very positive about their learning that they had that day, but initially, I think not as happy.
I'm a little
Yeah,
skeptical.
some.
And
not
we
as
heard a
happy
lot of
about the-
people say, oh, that fraction unit was terrific, or
Yeah.
that geometry piece, I'm going to go try that right like tomorrow. So when you get that feedback about PD,
Yeah.
you know that it was a hit, that they want to try it out.
Well, I can speak to that. My wife hates being out of the
Yeah.
classroom.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Like she will
Everybody does.
stack everything possible into a day off, like a personal day or something. Because it is so much work doing.
It is a lot of work.
sub-plans, and to have those sub plans go well in your class
Absolutely.
stuff. So yeah, I can I can appreciate that from what I hear. Oh, do we all know that, teachers have a contracted amount of time that they work. But I'm pretty sure that all of them work much more than that contracted
Absolutely.
time. So, as far as PD, do we give them resources to be able to like look into something specific on their own time? Or have access
Can
to that
you
type of thing?
talk to me a little bit about what you mean by resources?
So, for example, maybe in Wit and Wisdom, they're having a hard time with a section or something like that. Are there resources where they can go?
Oh, yeah.
Like in real time or after a PD
Oh,
session
boy.
or something like that and
Yes.
learn about
So,
that?
Sarah Beth, our coordinator, she has Google folders. Of course, we have our curriculum site, but in addition to that, Sarah Beth has organized Google folders by grade level, by module. So there's a number of resources that teachers can access for additional information.
All right. So going to, I guess, the PD, like as they're teaching. So if they have a problem with something, we have Sarah Beth is the one where a teacher would go
well,
and say,
and
this really
also-
isn't working. How do I do this?
Within the building, there are elementary literacy specialists. So each building has one of those.
And
that-
they meet together every month.
Yes. So the structure basically is Sarah Beth is our coordinator. In each building, there's a literacy specialist. Sarah Beth meets monthly with the literacy specialist, but she also then goes to each grade level in each school and meets with those groups. And the elementary literacy specialists, of course, meet with their teams. So there's a number of ways that they can kind of access support if they need it.
All right. Are the literacy specialists, are they working with kids individually?
Yeah,
Or are they,
they're doing both. They're working with teachers and they work with students.
all right.
And then
so
they
they're
have the
doing- they're
interventionist
doing
as
student
well.
Intervention
Yeah.
as well as supporting teachers.
Yes.
But in literacy, we have at least 3 to 4 interventionists on top of the specialist. In math, we have the one specialist, and we used to have math tutors.
All right. Yeah, that was mine. And then my other one was math specifically, like if it's curriculum focused or if it's just kind of overview. And it sounds like a lot of the math PD is more of a general.
It's going to be really on strengthening our knowledge and our instructional practice for classrooms. So making sure that teachers feel confident in the math. A lot of times, and was not an elementary person, and I'm certainly not a math person. But a lot of times our teachers at the elementary and sometimes the middle level, I would say through grade 6, they did not specialize in mathematics. So they may not be as comfortable delivering the content, or maybe knowing a variety of ways. For example, when you talk to a high school math teacher, they'll often know like, okay, the student isn't understanding. This is not a perfect example. I know they do ratios and proportions in the middle school, but let's say it's a middle school teacher. And I bet they know maybe 2 or 3 different ways to approach that if a student in their class or a handful of students in their class are not getting it the first way they taught it. Whereas at the elementary level, now I'm making a generalization because I'm sure there are a number of our of our elementary teachers that are strong at math, but I'm just saying generally what you find is that our elementary teachers, and when I say I mean statewide, nationwide, are not as comfortable because they just didn't have that training in their background. Maybe they had to take limited courses or methods classes that focused on math. And so that's why I really wanted to focus next year on just looking at strengthening their knowledge, their skills, and then how to deliver that effectively in the classroom to a range of students.
They are very versed in the Common Core and know what is the priority goals of their grade
Sure.
level. I think it's always good for teachers to know what comes before and what comes after as well. So because you're going to have kids who are gifted and might be beyond that, and they might have kids who still need help and support a year or 2 behind that, to get them up. But the presenter did say she was very impressed with our teachers' knowledge and
Yes.
ability. And certainly, I feel they are more comfortable than when I first arrived. They've had a lot of math PD, but I do feel like it's time for a little bit of a revival, just like what we've done with literacy. So, and I think that, I'm kind of looking forward. We've looked at the state curriculum and, looked at some exemplars and they've helped us even in selecting and trying out some things.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's great. I imagine that a lot of teachers that go into elementary ed, maybe they just weren't great in math and the earlier elementary school. Like,
Yeah,
I know speaking from some that I know very well.
yeah, I don't know if that's
wasn't
why
a
they
strong
selected
point.
elementary or they like being with the younger kids, but I do feel like there's a heavier emphasis on literacy than
Yeah.
in mathematics in the program.
and science as well, math and science. I mean, I was a math major at UConn and I wanted to be a middle school math teacher, but I was pre-K through 8 because back then in 7 through 12, they, certification was the kind of thing. If you got the degree, you got certified. So, but there, I have noticed that colleagues, there's some who really just get it. I think our interventionists or our specialists have had so much in-depth training that they really have understood it in a real big way. And so it's great to have those people in the buildings helping to support their colleagues. So,
Thanks. Any more questions or?
No?
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to show you my draft.
Yeah.
so I'm really excited having Anne Marie to do some of this, planning and working with the groups and, seeing some of these plans come to fruition. We're excited to show you too strategic planning. It's in a drafty form, but it's getting there. And we had a big team working on that. So I'm feeling like we're really moving forward with her support.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it and it is great. All right, next thing, review of the referral tracking sheet. I don't have one.
Yeah.
Was in the packet?
Oh, I have one.
Oh,
I'm not sure there's a point because they said we couldn't add anything as a committee. So
Well,
I
let's
don't
see
know
what you
why
have.
we do this
You
anymore.
have English language arts curriculum, 6 through 12, which I think you just did, but Andrea wants to keep it on there.
Yeah.
You have the program of studies for Groton Middle and Fitch High School. Those were just updated, I think, because kids have picked their classes. Developing a schedule for curriculum updates in all subjects. And I think you're just meeting with the department chairs up there and hearing them out has kept you kind of ahead. And they know now, they finally know to make sure that we're aware of what's coming up so that we follow that pattern, for the
Yeah.
curriculum. And then let's see, reading and writing K-5, and that's going to be ongoing.
Yeah. And Sarah Beth, that originally was supposed to be Sarah Beth's presentation here, but then it was the decision made to share that with the larger board. So that was something that,
Mhm.
obviously we just did.
Right, right. And then financial literacy,
Yes.
that's coming up.
Melissa Manzione.
Oh, she already did
presented
that?
last month.
that.
Oh,
We
okay,
did that, but
good.
then they wanted it on still for some
Yeah,
reason.
for,
Anyway,
Yeah.
I think it's,
We should have
Matt
checked
Schulman
Matthew,
that
but
wanted
yeah,
it.
was Matthew that.
and then
was-
the honors classes. I know that you've discussed that.
Also, I think that was maybe January or February.
Yeah, and then discussion regarding study of IB. So that's going to be interesting having that review process. That's
Yeah.
quite an
Mhm.
intense process
Mhm.
for both the MYP and the IB.
So it sounds like that's one for kind of early next year.
And Bev had put on the math curriculum, which we just talked about. But again, that's not one and done. This
Yeah.
is like ongoing, all of this. It's like
Yeah, so
quite a project.
last month, in addition to the financial literacy, we did the review of math curriculum.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
You guys
are-
have been really working
we
away.
can- I assume that we can put things on the
Excuse me, is-
referral sheet,
Well,
right?
well, I think you come, when we did, it didn't show up.
Or is that for the COW? That's a whole page.
So When-
Yeah,
we did a couple meetings ago, we put stuff on and it didn't show up on the referral tracking because it has to be done by the whole board. So
yeah.
we've got quite a lot on there
Seems like
for
we-
us.
Talked about it a lot.
On the
how to modify
COW.
that, but not
Yeah.
actually.
There you go.
Um, Well, the COW,
That has the most. Policy, we're
we'll-
just,
we'll go through that.
Yeah.
Whenever Bev's gonna bring that up. I guess we can live. Is there anything else you want on the, like you're interested in for?
well, I think the strategic planning is something we'll want to
I mean,
share, but that's probably the whole board too.
for me, I don't know if it's on there, but AP, IB, like kind of test score successes and things like that. And not for this school year right now, but to go through that. It actually might, in terms of the context of the IB program, might help. Might be looking at that anyway. Like how many people are taking a test? What's the score range?
We did that last year and we'll be ready to do that in the, near future, once the tests are all done. and
Yeah.
We did
completed.
it this year as well. The kids are just starting AP tests. In fact, my daughter just took AP economics today. So I know that the tests are just for AP are starting.
Yeah, May is the
And
big month.
And IB starts this month as well.
Yeah.
They may have already started, I believe.
So it seems like that's sort of thing to bring back in the,
Mhm.
Yeah,
the
maybe we could do it
fall,
like
right? Like when the scores are in
September
and
or something like-
everything.
Yeah, after those, 'cause the scores come back in July or something, right?
But-
So, yeah, we can,
We're all ringing.
yeah, so maybe if we could do that and kind of, and then at that point, we'll know class sizes and that kind of thing as well. So maybe we can review all that together. Like how many sections of each class, how the grades were, how many kids are in each class, how the grades were last year. What the changes are year to year, that type of thing.
And for me, it's not only about the scores, it's about the variety of,
Yeah.
of classes too. So,
But yeah, maybe we can make that a deeper dive into all of them. Which will be, it's gotta be, was there probably 40 classes, I guess, in total in that range?
It all depends on who signs up for what.
yeah,
Right. So
Yeah.
you'd have to see what's currently going on. And I haven't even seen how the scheduling has gone well. And I know that the classes are pretty full, but I haven't really looked to see all of the ones that are running.
All right, so we'll kind of leave that on the study of IB. We'll just make that the AP and IB classes. We'll just modify that. All right, so we kind of hit future meeting topics in the same thing. We're at the end. You have a motion?
I don't know if we can do this.
I know.
I move to adjourn.
All right,
Wow.
second. All
That's
right,
a
thank
good
you.
one.
Thank you, everyone.